Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Gosh, more people are arriving. It looks like we're going to be very well attended today. Um, we've been given it a few extra moments just to allow people to arrive, but I'd just like to start by welcoming you all to today's Learn from the Experts webinar. The idea behind this, and this is both the Suffolk Chamber of Commerce in association with the Carbon Charter. We're presenting this to hopefully a lot of people who may be charter members already, but if you're not, this is a good way of just presenting this and explaining what the concept of the Carbon Charter is and what you as a business can do to green your operations to become more environmentally friendly, and through the Carbon Charter maybe gain an accreditation to show for it. So we've got some fantastic speakers today. As I say, I'm Peter Frost from Suffolk County Council. I'm Environment Strategy Officer at Suffolk County Council. I'm going to be your chair for today. Hopefully you're going to find this webinar extremely informative. Moving straight in, I got to start just with a little quick intro about what the Carbon Charter is all about, a little bit of the concept of it. It was found over 10 years ago now. It was begun by a chap by the name of Ned Harrison, who's still with the council. He started it from the point of view that a lot of businesses aren't actually able to pursue the big accreditations like ISO 14001 and that kind of thing. So the idea of the charter was to bring together a network of environmentally minded businesses across Suffolk, and also it was extended to include Norfolk as well, bring them together so they can work together, discuss what the challenges to greening their operations are, and basically liaise together so that they could boost their businesses. Because I don't know if you've all noticed, but the environment is becoming one of the prime considerations of businesses these days. It used to be very much on the back burner. It used to be something, oh, we'll look at the environment if we can, but our business operations take center stage. Now it's almost reversed that, in that your main business operations can't happen without keeping your ducks in a row, if you like, as far as the environment goes. So so I'm the lead on this network, and if you haven't been to the website, I would highly recommend carboncharter.org as a wealth of information on there, and all of the background and a lot of really useful advice on what businesses can do. But there are already a very useful active network all across Norfolk and Suffolk of businesses that are looking at their operations in this way. So it's worth looking on there, seeing if there's a lot of business to business work that can take place, maybe not just looking at the green consumer. So yeah, we've had a lot of successes. As I say, it was started over 10 years ago. What we found is, a few years back, we used to sorry, Kate's just come through and said can't hear audio. I hope everyone else is okay on the audio. Just basically, we noticed that a few years back we were going out to businesses and saying, have you considered your impact on the environment? And what we've found now in the last few years is that's actually flipped, it's reversed. Businesses are now coming to us and saying, we're actually losing out to our competitors who have got the environmental message right. We want to come on board with the Carbon Charter and use that to help green our operation. And what businesses find is, once they do embark down that road, it has a twofold effect. One, it does have that very useful extra thing to talk about potential clients too, but also you're improving the efficiency of your business. As soon as you start improving the efficiency and reducing wastage, you suddenly find that you're making more money. The money that you are spending is going on boosting your business rather than being wasted. So we find quite often that businesses, we become their best friend ever, because they do realize there is tremendous advantage to this. So just to carry on with that advantage theme, if you actually look on the website, there is actually a members page and a map on there that shows you where the businesses are. Now, each one of those businesses, we like to think of as an exemplar. They're not just applying the green message to their own operations, but they're also spreading the word out across the various sectors that they work in. And when you look down the members directory, you see there's a vast range of different businesses on there. Ones that you would never expect would be looking at being environmentally friendly. So so that's quite an interesting site to visit. And when you go out and talk to your potential clients, you find it's a really useful extra conversation point to open the chat with them, where you're not just acting as a salesperson, you're actually talking about something maybe is very dear to their heart, and you can say, we've actually got an accreditation to show that we're serious about our impact on the environment. Other benefits of membership are networking events online, like this one, and we have many webinars during the course of the year, packed with really key information that you want to be on board with, because it could give you the inside track in what is a very competitive world. But we also have physical events as well. Back on the 5th of July, we had an event on the Norfolk-Suffolk border at Broome, and that was really well attended, our best attended physical event yet. But we also have other ones, like we had a tour of Maple Farm Kelsale the other week and saw what can be achieved on the farming side of things, which was that was just a fantastic evening out. So, and remember, there will also be another webinar like this in October. So on the events page on the Carbon Charter website, you'll see all of the events that are lined up, coming up soon. It's well worth keeping an eye on that page as well. There is other support for businesses as well, maybe that a lot of businesses who aren't in the Carbon Charter maybe aren't aware of. One of the key aspects, if you're a small or medium enterprise, maybe this is aimed more at the very small business, the mum and dad operation, or the whatever comes under an SME is eligible. But you can get Suffolk Business Net Zero Business Advisor. So you get one-to-one time and advice from someone at no cost if you're in Suffolk, where they can actually advise you on the steps you could be taking. So if you're starting to think about those first steps, what we've done with the Carbon Charter is made it a lot easier for you to make those first steps. So we have that, whereby you can get free advice from someone. But we also have just recently launched in coordination with the Suffolk Chamber of Commerce. We had the launch day of the 25 by 25 campaign, which is encouraging businesses maybe who haven't made those first steps and are looking at net zero as maybe a bridge too far. It's a little bit of an overreach. What we're encouraging is to get 25% reduction of your carbon footprint maybe by 2025. That encourages businesses to look at the low-hanging fruit, the easier things that they can do, and you can make that 25% quite easily, and it's a good step in the right direction. And you can then take that, you don't have to join the Carbon Charter, you can use that on your website, that 25 by 25 logo. You can talk to clients about it, say you are doing something, and that's a very easy way into getting off the starting line of the journey to net zero. As I say, 25 by 25 is really a good campaign to have a look at. All of the details of that are on the website as well. There aren't many grants around at the moment, but we've actually, one of the other advantages of being in the Carbon Charter is you can get information about what grants are available to your business. So maybe you're thinking of doing something that would help the environment, but a little bit of grant support would be a very useful addition to that. So we've just in the process of launching the Net Zero Innovation Fund Suffolk, which is also again aimed at the smaller businesses that could do with a little bit of maybe financial support to get an idea that's new and innovative, that they've got sort of under consideration, but they need that little bit of grant support maybe to take it from the theoretical stage to the practical stage. So it's well worth looking on the Carbon Charter website at the grants and fundings page, and the Net Zero Innovation Fund Suffolk is actually listed on there. That's brand new, so you're very useful coming to this webinar today that you're hearing it here among the first to find out about that. So just to give you an idea, it's got a, if you were thinking of, if you had an idea in mind that you were thinking of bringing to market, but you weren't sure about how moving forward with it, if your idea shows a clear link to the net zero transition, if it's scalable, and it's got potential for data collection and evaluation, and it can be evidenced to be an original idea. This is what we're looking for with this, and you can maybe deliver outcomes by the end of 2024. So it's quite an immediate project. Then that would fall under the that would fall under the remit for the Net Zero Innovation Fund Suffolk. So as I say, this is basically my little spiel here has been a plug for the website carboncharter.org. If you're not familiar with it, go there where you can keep up with the latest news, sign up for the newsletter. We have a very, very well-received newsletter. It's only once a month, so it's not going to clog up your inbox, but that's well worth being aware of that. You don't have to belong to the Carbon Charter to get the newsletter. It's open to anyone. So that's some info about what the Carbon Charter is all about. So anyway, today we're going to be joined. We are joined by 3 businesses who are going to be sharing their insight into their journey. I'd like to move straight on and introduce you to the first speaker. While we might say that there was a stop press announcement with the Net Zero Innovation Fund Suffolk, the bonuses just keep coming on this webinar. I'd like to introduce Edward Downey, Fleet Director at Bacton Services Limited. Bacton Transport is the 3rd generation of a family-run transport business. They're based near Woolpit in Suffolk. If I can hand over to you, Edward, and you take over and make your presentation. And I think you've got some good news for everyone.
Good news every day, Peter. Thank you very much for the intro. Hope you can all hear me okay. And I would recommend anybody embarking on the accreditation for the Carbon Charter. I mean, Peter's been a fantastic mentor to us as a business, to me personally. So enthusiastic, and it's been a real pleasure since we signed up and started this 3 years ago. So Bacton Transport Net Zero, we're on our way. Next slide, please. So this is a brief overview of Bacton Transport. We're 90 years young. I joined my dad at Bacton Transport 30 years ago, and my brother joined 20 years ago. We're both involved every day, so it's still very much a family business. My son is actually, well, he's been with us for the last year driving a truck, so 4th generation, but he's decided now to go off traveling around the world to see what's going on. Whether he'll come back, who knows? So Bacton Transport, we operate around 80 trucks, both on local and national distribution. We do anything from small trucks doing home delivery up to the biggest 44-ton trucks. We employ somewhere in the region of 160 people across 2 sites. Our main site is here where I'm located at Woolpit along the A14, probably most renowned for at the moment. We're right opposite all the roadworks that hold everybody up, trying to get in and out of East Anglia at the moment. We then have another satellite depot in near Nottingham, where we operate a 24-hour service for a large supermarket. Our fleet covers somewhere in the region of 5 million miles every year, using, unfortunately, 500,000 gallons of diesel. So when it comes to carbon, we're quite prolific. To secure our future and our growth, the last point on the slide, we moved into a new site just over a couple of years ago, which we have tried to make as sustainable as possible. Next slide, please. So we have 4 core components as part of our net zero framework. Whilst the fleet obviously is the most prominent and problematic, I guess, for sustainability, the other 3 are equally as important. and vital parts towards our overall journey. Sorry, people are waving at me in the office, so if I seem a bit distracted, we're getting sorted out. Slide 4, please. So, as I say, having a large fleet of trucks, we've just got to do whatever we can to try and reduce the impact on the environment. So, what are we doing? We are using what we call double deck trailers. In the photo, that's the curtain sider in there. In that picture is what we call a single deck. We have 16 what we call double decks, where we can actually double up the amount of pallets that we are moving on a daily basis, which is a great way of doing it. We can extend the length, and whilst we haven't got any yet, we will be looking at extending the length of the trailers to be able to put another 8 pallets on in addition. We try and replace our trucks regularly, so we can take advantage of the latest technology, and which includes the scientists behind all the truck manufacturers have done an amazing job reducing emissions on the vehicles. It is hearsay that the air you breathe, or that's coming actually out of the exhausts on HGVs, is probably better for you to breathe in than actually the air in some of our cities. The other thing, the onboard systems on the trucks will now almost drive the trucks will drive themselves, including braking, accelerating, changing gear. All the driver really has to do now is literally steer them. So that does help us reduce tyre wear, brake wear, all various components. And as we all know, anything we can do to reduce the wear and tear, to replace things, has got to be good always round for our carbon footprint. The other thing about all this is that it does make it a massively less stressful job for the drivers. And we are finding, particularly in our industry, a difficulty in recruiting truck drivers. So anything that can be done to make the job more appealing, we obviously would like, we welcome that with open arms. Next slide, please. Sorry, I've got ahead of myself. Can you go back to the last one? So going on from the drivers, we do a lot of driver training. We have a driver trainer on site both here and at Nottingham, helping the drivers. And one of the biggest things is idling, especially when they're waiting to load and waiting to unload. It's a similar concept, I guess, to the start-stop function I'm sure many of us have on our cars. And basically our mantra here is, if you're not moving, then please turn the engine off. One of the other points on the slide, we've reduced the vehicle maximum speed by 3 miles per hour. That's notched up us an over a 5% fuel benefit across the business. And with all these things that we're doing, we don't see any loss in productivity to the business. And again, it's all good for the drivers, because it reduces stress, and if the trucks are limited, they can't go any faster. They have to accept their journey times. Hopefully it makes them more relaxed, so they'll have less accidents. So again, we're replacing less spare parts. It also avoids, I'm sure a lot of you driving up and down the road network in the UK, you have this situation where 2 trucks will drive side by side for what can be seemingly miles, because their speed limiters are set exactly the same. By us reducing hours, we don't actually have that problem. So hopefully that makes it far more enjoyable, not only for our own drivers, but everybody else, the general public on the road network. So with all these different things and initiatives we're putting in place, we're actually trying to be and make our business as efficient and more efficient all the time as possible, to achieve better load fill, so we effectively have fewer journeys and increase the fuel consumption. We're doing whatever we can. There's a piece on there about alternative fuels. I've actually been out in different electric trucks. I'm sure some of you got electric cars, but I find these electric trucks are so relaxing to drive. You get no no noise at all from them. I can't really describe it, but it is a nice, great feeling. But there you go. For the cost of them, then they ought to be pretty good, because we're looking over a diesel truck somewhere in the region of 2 to 3 times additional cost. There is a range issue, as we're all the phrase range anxiety is fairly prominent, but and then we've got to worry about the charging infrastructure. But I do think, especially in our business, we could overcome all those obstacles. I don't think we can just sit there and say it's not going to be good for us. We have to find a way to be on board and overcome, so we can actually operate these trucks. Green hydrogen is another alternative. I've been part of the Eastern Gateway initiative, where they're looking at a green hydrogen project. And actually, there is a green on the Port 1 development at Great Blakenham. They are talking about having a hydrogen fueling station there, which I'm pretty sure is part of the Felixstowe Dock and Sizewell development as well. Amongst all the alternative fuel debate, we as a business, I am firmly a believer that we need to be doing something, and will do something. Slide 5, please. So this is an industry standard, FORS Gold. There's not too many hauliers who've attained this accreditation, and we are particularly proud of achieving this. It's mainly across, and the reason I'm talking about it is that mainly it enables us to deliver into construction sites who are signed up to this charter. Whilst it's London at the moment, I think it will spread out across certainly the UK main cities first. And it's all about sustainability, health and safety, good practice. And one of the biggest things is the training for the drivers. And it is concerned, all the training about the environment, with the environment in mind, and driving in urban areas. So it's things like using preferred routes to access the construction sites, because in London, that's not the best place to try and deliver to. And another large part of it is all about vulnerable road users, i.e. pedestrians and cyclists in built-up areas. We hear a lot about that on the news. And in fact, part of the training is where the drivers do actually have to go out on a bicycle. Some of them, unbelievably, it's the first time ever. But for many, it's certainly something they haven't done for a long, long time. But anyway, they all live to tell the tale. And we only did that in, excuse me, earlier this year. And we probably trained somewhere in the region of 80 drivers. So if nothing else, we've hopefully got 80 very proficient cyclists. Next slide, please. So our team, again, massive... To bring all the staff on board and to buy into all this is a really big thing to do. You can see on there the things we are doing, and we're just always engaging with them to try and get them to think about, instead of just chucking things in the bin, turning up the heating in the office, let's just think, could we wear an extra jumper? Could we not print out that piece of paper? I know as part of the whole overall carbon, and we've got trucks out there all day, every day, but you've got to start small and do whatever you can to get people just thinking about this whole problem. We're replacing our drinks machines in the office, where we've got 2 in the office. We are going to replace those shortly, where we are taking away the paper cups. One of the main benefits of that is that I don't have to walk around our site here and pick them all up and put them in the bin. So that's another plus point for us doing that. Next slide, please. Right, okay, this might be something to do with what Peter was saying in the introduction. It's not a typo. Literally in the last 2 weeks, we have been awarded the Gold Carbon Charter accreditation. something I must admit I didn't think we would achieve, but we did our so we started and we joined at bronze level a couple of years ago. So as part of our biannual reaccreditation, we put all our paperwork and did the whole process. And I would like to just mention Eleanor as one of the ground workers on Peter's team. I don't think we'd have done it without her. What an amazing help she was to us to be able to achieve this. And so we literally, so when I accepted the invite, I'm not sure that we'd even put the application in, but you know, it's brilliant, and we're so pleased, proud, excited to be gold. You can see on there, there's targets. So whilst we've got gold, we're certainly not going to stop there. We are going to make sure we carry on and to do whatever we can to keep on this path to reduce our carbon and to become net zero. Next slide, please. So one of the main reasons, one of the main things that enabled us to become gold is, as I've mentioned earlier, we moved to our new site, Lawn Farm. Very, very sort of, well, I suppose I could say, having moved to a new site, one of the main reasons was because also it happened to cost us quite a lot of money to move here. But saying that, we could have done it more cheaply, but actually by putting the solar panels in, by putting the vehicle wash system in, and doing all these other initiatives, while it all cost us money, we think it's money well spent. And actually, as a cost model, we will over the next few years, carbon alone, net zero alone, we will save. It will enable us to save money, and as I've mentioned earlier, we have become more efficient. Things like the electric forklifts are so responsive, the drivers love using them. So there are bonuses, and there are other things in addition to just the cost and the carbon. It's a great place for people to come and work now, which is, as I said, anything we can do to help employment, to help people to come and stay working at our company is absolutely great. Next slide, please. So community, another large part, and what's really great, you'll see some photos here and things that we've done as a business. All these initiatives have come from the staff at Bacton Transport, and as an owner, it's just lovely to be able to support them and show the community. You know, we probably don't get the best press in the world as being a transport company. So to be able to do something out there to support and help charities, and the staff love doing it as well, is absolutely brilliant. And it fits in with us as a business, our values, our whole net zero sustainability. And it's great. If you like, it's the nice part of running a transport company. Can you move to the next slide, please? So the SARS logo on your right-hand side, that's now our first truck where their logo is going on the rear doors. And when I mentioned it and started mentioning it to people in the business, the first thing they all came back with, why haven't we done it before? And yes, it's a great thing to do. So I don't know if anybody knows about SARS, the Suffolk Emergency Medical Charity. So it is mainly they are linked to 999, and they attend accidents and emergencies, RTAs. So we thought that was particularly part of what we do every day, and it would be great to support them. The middle point on the slide, release on temporary license agreement with Her Majesty's Prison Hoseley Bay. So we've started that this year. It's a scheme for those coming to the end of their sentences, and is giving them a transition, an introduction back to civilian life. in particular getting employment with businesses. We now at Bacton Transport have 2 members of staff here working under this arrangement. They're both in the warehouse. One has recently just passed his truck license, so will in the next few weeks become a truck driver at Bacton Transport. So we think that's absolutely brilliant. Please wish us luck. We're a finalist in the Large Business of the Year East Anglian Daily Times Awards tomorrow night. So we're all going along to that. And that's me done. Thank you very much for listening.
Edward, thank you so much. Fantastic news about your accreditation. Many congratulations on that. And I am privy to feedback from the charter panel that actually looked at this case. And what really amazed them, what really impressed them, was that every one of the recommendations that Bacton Transport had been given on their previous accreditation, you guys had acted on, but not just acted on as a sort of tick box exercise. You've really taken them and run with them. So yeah, it's fantastic, and I look forward to joining you in the cab of an electric truck at some point. That's something to look forward to.
Thanks, Peter.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Okay, everyone. Next, can I introduce Natasha Jones, head of marketing and new project development at Fairfields farm. Well, fantastic operation, not quite in Suffolk. So although I mentioned earlier that the Carbon Charter covers Norfolk and Suffolk, right there on the Essex Suffolk border is Fairfields farm. Very, very welcome to come on board. Obviously, there's increasing concern about food security in the UK sometimes. It's great to have someone from the food production sector chatting to us today. So Natasha, please do take it away.
Thank you. So yes, as you say, I'm Tash. I'm from Fairfields Farm, and just wanted to talk to you guys a little bit today about how we're tackling our carbon footprint and maybe point to a couple of useful resources that have got us to this stage. And we are still kind of early on in that process, and a bit further on in some respects than we thought we were. So thought I'd sort of share a little bit of that with you. So next slide, please. So you might know us from our snacks. We make crisps, we grow potatoes, we make crisps on the Essex and Suffolk border. We do have a couple of fields in Suffolk, so I think it's okay to be here. They're good snacks. This isn't the point of this webinar, but they're very lovely, and I hope you can pick them up in the co-op and all of that stuff. So next slide, please. So you may recognise these two. They are on the back of the pack. This is Robert and Laura Strathern. They are my bosses. They let me do these kinds of things. And they are 3rd generation farmers. And it's becoming really, really important to them, having seen what's happening climate-wise, the strange summers, strange winters, strange springs, all of that we've been having, that we kind of do our bit to address that. So I just read our mission out to you, if that's all right. So we're a family farming business, and we'll never lose sight of that. We grow our own potatoes and make our own crisps to a high standard in a safe and inclusive environment. Our customers are at the heart of absolutely everything, and we treat them with respect. We look after the present, but keep an eye firmly on the horizon, because we are temporary custodians of this land and will pass it on in a better sustainable condition for future generations. And I see this lived out every day on the farm, and have really good chats about what we're up to next with Robert and Laura. Next slide, please. So before I talk to you about all the bits and pieces we do and what has helped us out, I wanted to introduce a couple of caveats. So next slide, please. Now, the important thing to know is Fairfields Farm is not sustainable. We are a consumer packaged goods business. We produce food. We have tractors running up and down the fields constantly. And it is very difficult for a business like that to say we are fully sustainable. Obviously, our goal is to be net zero, but you really need to be wary of any company that is saying that they are sustainable. Like when they say we're 100% sustainable, what does that mean? It's 100% this or 100% that. I think you really need to dig into the details a little bit. And what my role partly at Fairfields Farm is to be a sense check and go, can we really say this? Are we greenwashing here? How do we make sure that what we say to people is fully true? So next slide, please. And the other important thing to say is that even though we've got a few bits that have been helpful that I'd like to share, we do not have the answers. We're still relatively early on in this journey. We've found some things really helpful, some things less helpful. And I think that it's worth also being wary of those brands that say that they have, you know, this all sorted out. And I thought it was really interesting how Edward was talking about, you know, quite openly, we have a big fleet of diesel run vehicles. So we've still got some way to go. And there are some things that potentially aren't ever going to be possible. But we can mitigate and do what we can to reduce our impact. So next slide, please. We are committed to getting to net zero by 2030, and we're making some very, very good progress towards that. This is a goal that we check every year. In fact, at the moment, it's about every 6 months as climate science changes, as we see new statistics come out, and as the food industry changes, just to make sure, sense check that still feels like it's a reasonable goal. We were wavering a little bit on that this year, but we think that we can commit to that. So we're very happy to say we are committed to getting to net zero by 2030. Next slide, please. So I would say that we started this journey probably about 5-6 years ago, and that was in changing the way we farmed. But in terms of actually concentrating on it, making it a business priority, that was about 1.5 years ago. So we're a year into being part of the Suffolk, or part of the Carbon Charter. So how have we got this far? First of all, loads and loads of measuring. It's astonishing the amount of measuring you have to do. When you're looking at scope 1, obviously that's a little bit simpler. That's about fuel usage. When you're looking at scope 2, electricity, that kind of thing. And then you get into scope 3. And when you are an end-to-end manufacturing business that has transport, that has raw material production, you know, actual growing potatoes from the ground, that takes a little bit more effort. So we had to ask really ridiculous and random questions to get to the point where we knew what our carbon footprint might look like. And then we had to make sure that we were applying emissions figures to everything, using standardized tools, that kind of thing. And then we came on to the stage of reviewing. So we have a sustainability committee. It's not many of us because we are a very small business. We have just about 50 full-time employees. So it's me, head of operations, factory manager, and Robert, our head farmer and our co-brand owner. And we get together and we go through this honestly stonking spreadsheet we have of our carbon footprint, and we go, what can we do now? What we can do this year? What are the quick wins to really reduce our impact quickly? And what are the ones that are sort of a longer term goal? And I think that's been really helpful, because sometimes the things that have the big impact aren't the things that you imagined. So for example, we keep our soil covered in winter. We put cover crops in, and that has honestly leagues more impact than whether we recycle our waste or not. And we do recycle our waste. But it's really interesting, particularly in agriculture, the changes we can make to the way we do things that make such a difference to our carbon impact. So next slide, please. And then onto our stage 3, which was committing. So we talked about this carbon net zero goal by 2030, and our goal to be carbon neutral this year, which is us. We're about 60% of the way with that, with on-farm interventions, so things we do on the farm, and we've got that extra 40% to go. So at the moment we're offsetting that 40%, and our goal is towards 2030 to get down to 0% on that offset. So unfortunately the food industry is full of liars. I shouldn't say that, should I? It is full of greenwashing. There are headline stealing eco pledges, big banner, we're going to do this by this date, or we are entirely plastic free or palm oil free, or you know, this or that, and they don't always happen. So we wanted to make sure that what we said we could do, we would do. And then finally acting, so that's doing things, making sure that we're making those steps to become carbon net zero. So next slide, please. So some of the things that we do, I talked about the cover crops before. They're fantastic. They fix nutrients, not just carbon, into the soil, and they make the soil healthier for the next crop. And they're actually a kind of green manure, organic matter themselves. And one of our big goals, aside from carbon reduction, is to increase the organic matter in our soil, because the more organic matter we have in our soil, the healthier it is, the better yields we have. It's good business sense as well as good environmental sense. And I think that that's true probably for a lot of you that are looking at your carbon reduction, how it might benefit you. Sometimes it's just that you can put, well, sometimes it's that you can put a sticker on it and go, look, we're doing everything we can. But here we have the potential to make more money by doing things in a better way, which I think is a really important point. It's sometimes a little bit ignored in the whole process. And there's also this benefit of cover crops that we don't get so much erosion either. So you don't see all the soil on the roads during winter, which can be quite annoying. We also have our home farm, which is about 500 hectares. We have a pipe network which goes around the farm in a circular route, and it means that our team are able to directly transport water or slurry from our reservoirs and our slurry pits directly to those fields, rather than having a lot of road haulage and the associated emissions with that as well. And the really great thing about our slurry fertilizer is that it's made at our on-site anaerobic digestion plant. So an anaerobic digestion plant works where you feed it maize and you feed it rye, and you can feed it other things like rotten potatoes and some household sort of composting waste, and it compresses it, it makes it warm, it releases gas that goes into the national grid, and at the end of it, so it's good in that it produces energy, renewable energy, but it's also good in that the byproduct of it is this sludgy mess that's left over, that is really high in nutrients, high in nitrogen, all those kinds of things that we need, and we can then mix that up with water and spray it on our field. So it's been really fantastic for us to be able to help improve our soil structure using the digestate from our AD plant as well. And we also keep building reservoirs. I don't think I imagine you've probably noticed, but it's been a bit dry when it shouldn't have been dry over the last couple of years, particularly for farmers. The weather's been a bit topsy-turvy, so it's become more and more important that we're able to be self-sufficient, and that we're able to store water, store water in reservoirs, fill them in winter, and then that means that when that hot weather hits, we're less reliant on the water network as well. We don't have to extract from rivers and cause, potential environmental damage that way as well. So that's another sort of thing that we do on the farm. Next slide, please. And the other big bit we're doing is sort of rewilding, woodland creation around the farm as well. We're identifying bits of fields that probably aren't as productive, the edges, they're either becoming field margins, pollinator strips, or like we did last winter, we created an entire new woodland. So planted over 2,800 trees, 11 native species. That's Robert there shoveling compost, locally sourced compost, of course. And we created 2 brand new woodlands, but one particularly large one in West Burgoll, which is our neighbouring village, and we used it as an opportunity to also engage our neighbours as well. So we asked people from the local village to come along and help us plant. We gave them crisps, of course, pastries, hot chocolates during winter, just to help us get those trees in the ground. We use biodegradable tree guards as well, which have actually been holding up really, really well. We were sort of doing a trial bit with Essex County Council, actually. So I'm looking forward to reporting back to them that I think they've been a big success. I went to visit the trees a couple of weeks ago, and I'd say that we've got about 70 to 80% success survival rate, and given the summer we've had, I think that's fantastic. So very happy with that. Next slide, please. One of the big things, and one of the easiest ways we found to really interrogate, investigate, reduce our carbon footprint is to engage with our suppliers. So when we speak to any new suppliers, we ask them what they're doing. We ask whether they have a footprint that we can take into account when doing our own. And we work with people. We try to work with people who are able to go that level above and provide a better service in terms of environment. So for example, our branded crisp packaging is carbon net zero accredited. And we've also just been talking to, you know, our oil suppliers, and they said, do you know, if you just change this tariff a little bit, then you can reduce your carbon footprint even more. So next year we'll be able to reduce about 46, actually probably about 50 tons of CO2 next year, just by switching that tariff. So there are these little things you can do that make such a big difference. And the other thing, and I know that Edward referred to this as well, is energy efficiency around the farm. So it's not that sexy, is it, turning the lights off, but it is very, very important. And we have things like our electric forklift. They make a big difference. Important to note, though, that we replaced our fueled forklifts with electric forklifts when they reach the end of their usable life, because it's not always great to just chuck your whole fleet out and start again, because there are all the carbon cost involved in creating those forklifts in the first place. We also reward our team for finding efficiencies as well, so ask them to figure out ways we can save a bit more energy, and that means that we're engaging everyone, or trying to engage everyone in our journey as well. And Robert is a farmer. He loves to save energy because that means he saves money. And as we all know, energy prices have been a little bit through the roof over the past few years as well. Next slide, please. And building on that, enhancing biodiversity as well. So this is related to carbon, but is also a sort of a corollary goal, a side goal, to create more diversity around the farm, more plant life, more wildlife, all those kinds of things. Our farm is home to 114 hectares of dedicated wild bird space. So it stays unused for between 2 to 7 years, and it's got thick crop that looks like weeds. It looks like it's full of weeds, and what we have is approximate in size to about half of Monaco, and I believe that Robert's planning on planting another 60 to 80 hectares this year as well. So that should really, really help us with our carbon footprint as well. Next slide, please. So yes, I talked about this earlier. I wanted to point out a few tools that we used to help us understand our footprint, because, as I say, when you've got looking at scope 1 through to scope 3 and you're an end-to-end operation, it can be a little bit daunting, and it was daunting, and I just thought I'd point out a few of the things that helped us on the journey and hopefully helped a couple of you, although I imagine many of you have seen all this stuff before. So next slide, please. So starting very much simply, this graphic and guide, it was so helpful to us when we were starting out. This is from the Carbon Trust. It's a simple graphic that shows you what's in scope 1, what's in scope 2, what's in scope 3. It's not 100% exhaustive as you go into it, but it is a brilliant way to start to understand those different scopes and where they're from. And there is a really nice guide, a guide to carbon footprinting for business that Carbon Trust do, that you can find free on their website, and it gives you a really good grounding on those sort of those steps. So, you know, the measuring, the reducing, the offsetting. Next slide, please. This spreadsheet, I love a spreadsheet, must be noted, but there is on the government website this finally titled Government Conversion Factors for Company Reporting of Greenhouse Gas Emissions, and it is an absolute treasure trove of trying to figure out exactly what your carbon footprint could be. So they've got conversion units there. So for example, if we were using 1 ton of natural gas, we would know that the total CO2 tons per unit would be, or per kilograms would be 2,539.25 according to this. It has fuels, it has commuting, it even has working from home, where you can put hours from working from home and then convert that over. It has water, it has electricity, it has not just electricity, but electricity transmission and distribution. So if you are on a 100% renewables tariff, there is still a carbon footprint associated in the transmission of that electricity. And that is scope 3, I believe, but it is there, it's all there. I think for most businesses, you can figure out your carbon footprint using this spreadsheet. It's honestly quite magic, but also quite hard work. Next slide. For us specifically in the packaged goods sector, and possibly useful for a few of you as well, is a website called Carbon Cloud. One of the things that I could figure out, for example, was the carbon footprint of producing or growing potatoes. With crisps, there are a couple of ingredients. It's mostly potatoes, then it's oil, and then it's a seasoning. We didn't know what the carbon footprint of rapeseed oil was. We could not figure that out reasonably. So we went to Carbon Cloud and we saw that they said that it was 2.1 kilograms CO2e per kilogram that we use. So I plugged in the number of oils, a number of litres of oil we'd used, translated that to kilograms, and then came out with the carbon footprint for our rapeseed. And that is, you know, here and there, this assumes a great British production, which we believe we buy our rapeseed oil from, but that was a really good help for us as well. Next slide, please. Very specific to farming, but there are some useful things here as well. So on the left is the Farm Carbon Toolkit, which was really helpful for us to figure out the offsets or the biomass sequestration that we were doing through our bird cover, through our pollinator cover, through our permanent grassland that we were setting aside. That could all be calculated with the Farm Carbon Toolkit. But what's also helpful in the Farm Carbon Toolkit is that it's a really easy to use tool and it's free. And it can also do things like production of plastic, so packaging, that kind of thing. So I would say that even if you're not a farm and you're sort of scratching your head at how to do your footprint, then it's worth just having a look and seeing if there's something there that might be helpful to you. On the other side, we had to use the Cool Farm tool, so we couldn't rely on just the Farm Carbon Toolkit, unfortunately, because the Cool Farm tool was really good at fertilizers, pesticides, all those kinds of things, and letting us know what the value of that was, and also our cover crops as well. So using the two of those, merging tools, I will say that along the way, we found that it was never one tool for everything. We had to pull from all different sources. And next slide, please. And really sort of echoing Edward's groundwork and Carbon Charter have been so helpful to us, specifically Amy, who basically looked at our spreadsheet, told us what was rubbish about it, told us what was great about it, and she has helped us so much to just point us in the right direction with things. And it's only been a few chats, but honestly have been profoundly important to our journey. And with thanks also to the East of England Co-op, because we do supply them in their stores, and they have helped fund sort of that access to groundwork. Although having said that, I've looked into different auditing, different kinds of processes since then, and I actually think they have really good value for money as well, and they're a charity. All those things is so worth looking into how they can help you reduce your carbon footprint and get to net zero. And next slide, please. In case you're interested, I thought I'd show you some bits of spreadsheet, but I will do this quickly just because I appreciate that you're probably a bit bored of me by now. So next slide, please. So here's an example of, honestly, just a section of our carbon footprinting where I've split it up into not scopes necessarily, but into how our business works. So here's the utilities we use, the electricity we use, the transmission and distribution. There's a CO2 equivalent blue column there, you can see lots of purple tabs along the bottom, which are all the different suppliers we have and all the receipts that they gave us that allowed us to figure certain things out. And what's really important is that year one is difficult. It's really difficult because you have to figure out the best ways to do these measurements. But then on that final column, that commentary column, was so helpful for me in year two, because I could refer back to it and go, oh, here's how I did it last year, so I can remain consistent with our footprinting. And just as an example of the kind of madness of some of these calculations, I'd like to pick out the farm diesel. So we use a cleaner fuel, which is called Shell GTL. It has it's better on particulates, those kinds of things. Carbon intensity, I wasn't sure of the difference, so we had to adjust that. So found out something like, where is it, says I'm seeing if you can read this. It ended up being something like 98%, 99% of the same footprint as farm diesel, but I wanted to be accurate and wanted to figure out what the Shell GTL fuel was. It wasn't in the government guidelines, so had to do an adjustment figure for that as well. The packaging transport and general transport, that was really helpful to use that government spreadsheet as well. So looked at, for example, our LDPE packaging for our potatoes. That traveled 1,632 miles last year. That was 8 deliveries over 204 miles, averaging a certain amount of tons per delivery, and assuming that it was on a particular lorry, so a 50% laden, rigid 3.5 to 7.5 ton lorry, and then plugged in that number. And if I knew that it was a bigger lorry, I'd put that in instead. So there's so much out there that is helpful, but it's just finding in the first place. Next slide, please. And then after having done that, we looked at what it means for our products themselves. So our 40 gram and our 150 gram pack, working on things like number of packs we produce, the seasoning we use, the weight of film, and we changed the weight of the film halfway through the year. So to reduce, in fact, our environmental impact. The weight of crisps that we needed, added in wastage, because you can't always get all the crisps in the bag, or there's a reason for them maybe a bit too brown, a bit too green, and they get chucked out of the system and then fed to pigs. So lots of minor little metrics that we had to use to come up with here are our emissions per pack. And that gives us a benchmark for next year as well. So we're reducing the weight of the film again. We're moving from a 3-ply to a 2-ply. And film is the packaging, just in case it's a bit too industry terminology there. We are moving all of our boxes from to FSC recycled, and it's mostly there. It's about 80% there at the moment, but that's going to make a huge difference as well. We've started doing a lot more box disposal on site as well, working with CSH. So there are all these sort of little ways that we can identify how we can use less. So if we can be more efficient with our oil, then we use less oil, then the emissions per pack go down as well. So this is now our benchmark, and we're going to look at reducing that year on year and hoping to get our own gold carbon charter soon. Next slide, please. So I mentioned earlier sort of, that whole supply chain thing, and it's really, really important. So for our team, we have independence. We're an independent business. We're not owned by anyone. We're not a multinational. We know how to farm. Well, I don't know how to farm. Robert knows how to farm. We have a really strong team, and we have this total oversight of our supply chain. And that means that we're able to really make a difference. And you might not have all of those things, but pick your strengths and reduce where you can. Next slide, please. So a big question for us is what's next? There's lots of answers, but the main answers are more on-site energy generation, more solar panels, more woodland, more pollinator initiatives, so places for our bees and birds to be happy, more stakeholder engagement, talking to our local communities, more accountability, things like this where we explain what we're up to, why we're doing it, and what we're not so good at, and more things we haven't even imagined yet. And I think that that's it from me after a nice little slide with some flowers on. So thank you very much.
Tash, thanks ever so much. That was brilliant. And I'll just pick up on your mention of groundwork as well. With the Carbon Charter, the groundwork are our delivery partners. So they actually go out to businesses and assist them, help them every step of the way to achieve the fantastic work that Fairfields Farm, along the lines of what Fairfields Farm has done. And I would also add, Tash, on top of all the good work you do, they are the yummiest crisps, by the way. I'm not afraid to say that. They're really nice. So thank you. Right, moving on to next speaker, Will Bridgman. He's managing director at Warren Services, and a man after my own heart, because Will has always worked on the basis that he believes that strategic alliances are the cornerstone of successful and sustainable businesses, which fits in very, very nicely with the ethos of the Carbon Charter. We're a network organization to bring people together, and so yeah, I'll hand over to you, Will, if that's okay, and please take it away.
Thank you, Peter. I'm aware we're overrunning, so I'll try and keep mine as brief as possible because people are very busy. Warren Services is a contract manufacturing company, family owned, 33 years old, 100+ employees over 2 sites in Thetford, Norfolk, but very, very close to the border. And people often think that Thetford should be in Suffolk. So obviously the Carbon Charter does spread across Norfolk and Suffolk. We started baselining our business in 2014. So, next year will be 10 years. And what have we really achieved, and why have we achieved it? So being a subcontract manufacturer, contract manufacturer, making someone else's product, we quite often can't affect what the product is made from because it's specified by our customer. So we've concentrated mainly on our scope 1 and scope 2. So what have we actually achieved? So in those 9 years, we've reduced our scope 1 and scope 2 carbon footprint by 93%. So our current scope 1 and scope 2 is only 6.25% of what it was in 2014. And that's per unit of production. The actual figures, we were, say, 1,000 tons of carbon equivalent scope 1 and scope 2 in 2014. We're now, this year, I've just done the numbers for this presentation, will be about 100 tons, but the business is twice the size. That obviously leads to the figures that I'm stating. Why have we done it? I laughed to myself when Peter called us experts. I definitely not class myself as an expert. I'm good at talking and listening to experts and watching YouTube videos and working with groundwork, and the Carbon Charter and lots of other people. And, we are already 14,001. We're on the journey to PAS 2060, which is a standard for carbon neutrality, but it is internationally recognized, because it's great me saying all these things, but it's better to have it independently audited. Why do we do this? People often ask me that. I've got 2 young children. My father said to me once, he's like 75, well, why, I'll be dead. I said, yeah, but Nancy and Henry won't be. And he's like, oh, right, yeah, you've got a good point there. So I think that changes your mindset slightly. If we want to employ the best, the smartest, the brightest young people in our business, they really do care. They do really see through greenwashing. They want to see what the company's actually doing, how we're making a difference, how they can make a difference, how they can be part of the change. I hate regulation. We're going to be regulated into this at some point. So why not let us make the decisions ourselves now, which can have a number of benefits. But, I'd rather it be my decision than me told to do it in 10 years' time. Everything I'm going to say that we've done up till now has been either cost positive or cost neutral. As we move forward to try and remove that last 6.25% of what we were in 2014, is definitely not going to be cost positive or cost neutral. So a lot of the things we've done up till now have been financially beneficial to the business as well. And the earlier we did them, the more benefit we gain. And also our customers are starting to ask about it. We've just won potentially £2 million a year contract for making sustainable tree shelters, which is quite funny when Natasha was saying about that. Slightly different from what they're using. These are made from British wool and castor oil and a cashew nut shell oil. And we will be running 2 production lines making these tree guards, which will protect the tree, and then after a period of time will then rot down and go into the soil and actually, you know, be zero toxicity into the soil and will disappear completely over time. I think both people said it: data, data, data. This is a data-driven thing. But what Natasha was explaining is quite complicated. Scope 3 is a bit of a complex beast. But if everyone dealt with their scope 1 and their scope 2, there would be no scope 3. So obviously, I've woke up in the middle of the night worrying about scope 3, and maybe I shouldn't have spent so much money on scope 1 and scope 2. But actually, fundamentally, if you deal with your scope 1 and scope 2 and try and influence your suppliers, and they deal with their scope 1 and scope 2, it'll all wash out. So that's why we've concentrated mainly on scope 1 and scope 2. But measuring is very powerful. Some of the things we've done, maybe I would have done in a different order if I'd really understood the numbers properly. We really do understand the numbers on a monthly basis now. And actually, scope 1 and scope 2 don't need to be an environmental expert, sustainability expert. It's like an accounting function. Your accounts department can generate all of those scope 1 and those scope 2 figures. It's quite simple. Scope 3 is more complicated. What have we done? Well, every factory has got full LED lighting, and not just LED lighting, the very most efficient LED lighting, but also one that gives me a 5-year guarantee rather than it gives me a 10-year guarantee rather than a 5-year, because it's all of those things. It's the amount of power they use, but then the amount of times you need to change it, all need to be considered into the costing model. You know, those were more expensive than another version, but they might have only lasted 5 years. So hopefully these will last 10 years plus. Solar, we've done 3 solar projects over the last 5 years. We've now got 605 kilowatts of solar. So it's over 1,500 panels on our 2 sites. The site I'm speaking from today, Brickfields, produces more power in a year than we consume in a year. And we're a big power user. You know, we've got big equipment, you know, laser cutting machines, punching machines, CNC machines, paint shops. You know, we use a lot of power, but this site now produces as much. We have got room at the other factory for another 210. So actually, no, we've got 805. So that would take us over a megawatt. Now that's a north-facing roof, so the payback is longer. But when I look at the numbers, when I present about solar on its own, we've spent about $500,000. We got some very good deals, and that will repay for itself in 3 years. So very, very good investment. You know, it's already paid back most of its money. Nearly all of our fleet is electric. You know, we've got 10 electric vehicles. We've still got 2 diesel vehicles. We are working on those, but we have embraced the use of HVO, which is a vegetable oil-based fuel rather than a fossil fuel. It's not a perfect solution, but I tried a JCB telehandler. It was too small for our application, so we're waiting to see what happens. But as an intervening step, we're using a HVO fuel. And people love the electric vehicles, especially my fellow directors, because it's very, very tax efficient. So not only are they amazing to drive, they're also, you know, from a business point of view, the electric vehicles, yeah, the initial purchase cost is higher, but the fuel cost is very, very low. The maintenance cost, we've never changed a set of brake pads on any of those 10 vehicles, and some of them have done reasonably high mileage. And people always worry about electric vehicles. Oh, I know range and stuff. Well, I drove to ski in France in mine last year, not a problem. You know, I was driven down to Heathrow or picked up from Heathrow yesterday. There is, and in our rural area where you can charge at home, you know, it is a very easy experience. You know, but I do a lot of miles, so I do have to access the charging infrastructure, but I personally don't have a problem. I have got Teslas, which does make it slightly easier with the charging infrastructure. One of the other biggest things we've done is the roof of this building. When we put the solar on, we insulated the roof and filled up a lot of holes. And that actually, just by doing that insulation and re-roofing, reduced our heat load by 50%. You know, we use biomass in this site. So we're burning wood pellets, which is still burning stuff. It's better than gas, but it's still not a solution. We will go to fully electric at some point. But just by insulating the roof, we're now using half the fuel we were, because we buy that fuel in. We can see exactly the difference that made. I've written down data again. I think, yeah, you need to make all your decisions around data. There's lots of data out there. The data is pretty easy to get together for scope 1 and scope 2. Like the gentleman Bacton said, all our forklifts are electric. Not only is that better for maintenance, better for cost, we don't need to have gas bottles on site. It's better for the inside the factory because we're not burning gas in a forklift in a factory where there's people working. I never quite got my head around how that was a thing. And that's right up to, we've got a big 8-ton truck that we use for unloading machinery. And actually, it's also a nicer thing to drive. It's much easier to control, especially an 8-ton forklift when you're trying to maneuver a very, very expensive piece of machinery. People just love it. We do have gas heating at one of the other sites, and we've got industrial ovens. We've swapped those here to green gas, which is gas made from crops. That's not the perfect solution. We are looking for direct electrification, and that will come, but it's a stopgap solution. We're trying to do whatever we can that's reasonable, so allows us to go on this journey. One of the biggest things, by measuring the data, when we had the solar, we had independent logging equipment fitted that also logged what power we were using in the factory. That data allowed us to make some massive savings, because we could clearly see what power was being used at what time of day and why we're using that power overnight or at the weekend. And we probably found £100,000 worth of savings just through modifying how things were controlled, how things were turned on and off. And the most efficient light or any piece of equipment is that equipment turned off. If we're not using it, make sure it's turned off. Not on and off, but if it's not being used, it needs to be off, because they're super efficient when they're off. We also, as we buy things, we think about their environmental impact. Every purchase, we think, what's this machinery? What's the power consumption going to be? What's, not just how efficient is it going to be at making the things we need to make, but how much power is it using? Is it going to need more servicing? Is it, all of those things are things that we now consider as part of our purchase. Obviously, health and safety is at the top, and the environmental stuff is the next thing down, how it's going to impact us in our working methods. I do worry, we are going to be net zero scope 1 and scope 2 this year. I do worry about the word net. We really want to drive to zero. I think net is used by some big, massive companies for greenwashing, by using loads of offsets. But actually fundamentally what we all need to be doing is getting to zero, not net zero, because that will actually make the changes, because, you can only offset so much, but people are using that as an easy way out. It's much cheaper now, to get rid of this last 100 tons, much easier for me to offset. If I want to change the heating at the Fice and Waste site, I want to use a combination of thermal storage and heat pump, maybe a £200,000, investment in that installation, and then the running cost. For me to offset that would cost £5,000 a year. But I know in myself, I really need to get to zero. So I do worry about the terminology. And actually, we were talking to government the other day. I think there needs to be some legal regulation around terminology, so everyone can easily understand what the words really mean and people can't misuse the words. I personally think we should all report scope 1 and scope 2 as part of our accounting function, but that doesn't make me very popular with some people. But that would make my analysis of my supply chain a lot easier if that was just part of what had to be done as you submit your accounts to Companies House, that you submitted that scope 1 and scope 2. Obviously, if you're over 250 employees, that's already done. I talked briefly about PAS 2060. I think having a internationally recognized standard for carbon net zero, carbon neutral, whatever word we want to use, is important, but that standard is still being developed, and getting that independently audited to a UCAS standard is quite difficult at the moment. We are working with some of those certification bodies. And I think part of me agreeing to talk today was around the biggest impact I can now have is actually talking about this and encouraging people within my sector or my area to look at what we've done. And, you know, most of the things I've listed out do take a financial investment, but most of them have a relatively short payback. You know, the solar could be 3 or 4 years. The LED lighting could be a couple of years. It could be 3 years. And there's deals out there where I think, particularly if you're in Suffolk, West Suffolk Council will put the solar panels on your roof and sell you the power. So if you haven't got the money, but me personally, as a family business that owns the buildings, we want to own that infrastructure. You know, there's some really, really easy wins. And if I can encourage, well, I have done, encourage lots of other manufacturing businesses to embrace this journey, they're going to have much more of an impact than I can have on my own. So that was a bit of a rush through, but I was very cautious and aware of the time. Anyone that's interested in what we've done, we quite often have people come and visit. I'm happy to talk to people, happy to, you know, I'm definitely not an expert. I've made lots of mistakes. I'm happy to share those mistakes. I'm happy to share all the data that we've got. I'm happy to share, you know, openly what I've done, if anyone wants to do that after this event. But Peter, back to you.
Will, thanks ever so much. That's fantastic. And I got to say, very impressed. 33 years of Warren Services. That's a lot of experience there. Thank you so much for sharing that with us today. And I agree completely about your comment about regulation. Regulations are coming, aren't they? These things are only going to get tighter and tighter. So it's better to move ahead of that and be you know, ready for it before it arrives. And all of the talk, I would just say to everybody, all of the talk about you know, about monitoring and spreadsheets and all of this. It's fantastic work. Once you start down that road, you find that there's amazing, you wouldn't just throw money away in the same way that a lot of businesses just throw efficiency away. So this is work well worth doing. And should you come on board with the Carbon Charter is there every step of the way to help you with monitoring, spreadsheets, and steps on your journey. So yeah, that's been fantastic today. I'm sure you've got lots of questions to ask our speakers. So we're just going to very quickly open up for a quick Q&A session. Please do use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen if you wish to do that, or if you raise your hands, the team can unmute you and you'll get a message prompt on your screen. So just click to accept that. Yeah, if we'll just go ahead. If I can also ask all the speakers to join me with your cameras and mics switched on, and we'll jump straight into the Q&A. I know I noticed one in the chat from very early on, which I think was aimed at your good self, Edward, was about and it has been, HVO has been mentioned. Has Bacton, where is Bacton Transport on that?
No, HVO? we haven't started the HVO route. Whilst there's obviously it does cost a bit more. I get the bit, it's a second life fuel, but Will might know a little more about this. He's obviously putting it in some of his kit, but I do understand the emissions actually coming out of the truck or what you're putting in are the same as diesel. So I'm you know, there is a trade-off here. You know, the little word greenwashing might come in, but again, if it is from a second life and you can reduce, then probably we ought to be doing it. We're not quite sure. We use about 50,000 litres a week. We're not quite sure we can get that kind of supply, get a consistent and regular supply on that kind of literage. We also use fuel up the road as well. Some of our trucks go out all week. And this is where the slight problem is with alternative fuels. Whilst we can do all we can, if we've got trucks based in our yard, going out from our yard in the morning, returning to base in the afternoon, and the same thing overnight, which we do, a lot of the miles for us as a business are created where the trucks go out all week and are fueling away from base. So funnily enough, we are, I mean, it's on the list to do. you know, that there is so much to do. So rest assured, HVO will be on our list.
Yeah, fantastic. And I've really enjoyed all the talk about the all of the talk about electric vehicles today as well, whether it's from the forklifts or, you know, the various aspects of it. I think you know, these things are going to come in there. They're going to improve and become more ubiquitous across.
I think, Peter, the HVO thing is, because it's such a small part of our business, Edwards, it's a massive part of our business. So the fact I'm paying probably 30% more, actually, because I'm trying to get to such a small number now, and it's not a perfect solution. I would directly electrify those vehicles if I could. They're just not available at the moment. So I see it as the next best thing. But if you're a commercial haulier, then you try and tell your customer, oh, actually, I need to be charging, because fuel's a big part of your cost base, Edward, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Somewhere 35-40%.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, well, if I can open up one of the questions, which has been, yeah, if someone's coming into this from you know, not having started on this journey, and of course the Carbon Charter is there to help you with that. But it'd be really interesting if I just ask each of you in turn, what's been the most surprising thing about your experience, or you know, the most surprising, or maybe the most frustrating thing? Start with yourself, Will.
I think the surprise. Well, it's not really. If you make decisions sometimes with your head or you're with your heart, like electric vehicles, we probably spent money on electric vehicles earlier than we should have done, and we should have done LED lighting first, if you looked at the actual numbers. But I quite like electric cars, and they're quite cool. So you do those things, but actually the best thing to do is actually look at the things. But the thing with electric vehicles, it's not just like the drivers love them. It's good for, you know, like cost, but also it's a sign to your customer as well. You know, they see that and they see you turn up and they see you talking about it and on LinkedIn. And I think, yeah, but the data thing is, data does make good decisions. It's not a surprise, really.
No, excellent. And Natasha, what was your feelings on what surprised you or frustrated you or on the journey?
I think one of the big things that surprised me was obviously when we're talking about environmental initiatives, people wanted us to look at packaging first and foremost, because obviously that's the what we put out into the world. It's the presentation of the product. And we have tried, I can't tell you how many different kinds of packaging to try and make it biodegradable, compostable, all these kinds of things. And I think the real surprising thing is, the deeper you go down that rabbit hole, the more you realize, right now the solution isn't there. But also when I do the calculation, I do the spreadsheet, I go, why am I spending quite as much time on this when I should be trying to make sure that the vans we send out are the right size for the appropriate for what they're hauling, and that kind of thing, which makes the bigger difference. Like, don't get me wrong, it's important because we know that it's what people see, it's their presentation of the product. But I think that's been the most surprising and the most frustrating is, I think I've alluded to this, is the greenwashing in our industry in general. There's a lot of it. There's a lot of this, particularly in packaging. So people going, we've switched to this and it's better, but actually, for example, a paper bag would need to be used something like 20 times more frequently than this one because of the pulping process, all those kinds of things. There's all these sort of bits where you just find yourself going around in circles sometimes.
Yeah, and you're not alone. One of the nice things about being part of a network of therapy assistants like the Carbon Charter is other businesses like Yum Yum Tree Fudge have said exactly the same about their packaging. It's such a problem, but the answers are going to come very soon, I think, with the amount of research that's being put into it. And Edward, would there be anything that stuck in your mind about the biggest frustration or the biggest surprise?
Well, yeah, two or three things. So, and again, Will said about it, the rate of return on capital employed. So whilst a lot of these measures do cost money, you soon get it back. And that definitely surprised me and us as a business. The accountants love it. And the customers, now we've got our gold, we've got customer feedback, and actually it's a talking point. It's actually opening doors for us in terms of securing contracts, securing work. And the other thing is when I go out on test drives or factory visits and with the various manufacturers, truck manufacturers, when I come back, a lot of drivers in the yard, they're all wanting to come and ask me how did I get on, what are they like to drive. So it just seems to be that people genuinely are interested, and they'd love us to the quicker we can have some of this kit in the yard, and hopefully there'll be a big queue of people wanting to drive them.
Yeah, oh, fantastic. We just obviously, as has been mentioned, we're coming to the end of the time now. If any attendees, anyone has any further questions, please do stay in touch. Please do get in touch with Carbon Charter. Let us know if you have an outstanding question. We can always, I know our generous panelists today would be happy to come back if there was a specific question. And I suppose I'll finish. Yeah, no one's raised their hand or anything for a last moment question. So I think what I think I'll do is I'll just end on can I get what's the panel's impression of the Carbon Charter Help? Have you been pleased with it? Have you been, you found it useful? Is it useful to be part of a network? Because I think that's what the charter is all about, that networking. So
I think, you know, they were the people where when I started our journey of measuring, and I couldn't highly recommend it. You know, it just makes it easier for you to start, because you can do it all on your own, but it's much cheaper to pay the Carbon Charter a little bit of money. It's, you know, it's peanuts in comparison to what you'd have to try and learn yourself. And they're just a wealth of experience because they've been in so many different businesses, and there's no new ideas. It's just a piecing all these bits together. You know, we're not sending a man to the moon. We're just doing little bits, and they've got that knowledge. So yeah, I'd highly recommend it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And I guess that's a thumbs up from the other two panelists as well, Tash.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I've got to say thank you ever so much to our panelists, William Bridgman, Natasha Jones, Edward Downey. Thank you for helping us out today. It's been absolutely fantastic. And thank you to all of our attendees. It's been brilliant to be able to share this with everyone. Please do one last plug for carboncharter.org, and I'll say thank you to everyone. Goodbye. And that's the end of the webinar.